November 1975. Portuguese flags have just come down. Angola is finally independent. But instead of celebration, the sound that fills Luanda's air is artillery. Cuban troops land at the port. South African armored columns push north across the desert. Three liberation movements, once united against colonial rule, now point their guns at each other. In the countryside, families flee through tall grass, terrified not only of soldiers, but of landmines buried beneath their own soil. How did Angola's independence in 1975 spark a 27-year civil war that killed between 500,000 and 800,000 people, displaced millions, left tens of thousands maimed by landmines, and turned the country into one of the Cold War's most violent proxy battlegrounds? This is the story of Angola's endless civil war. Welcome to Untold African Wars. Today we uncover the factions, the foreign powers, the atrocities, and the fragile peace that followed the death of Savimbi. For nearly 5 centuries, Angola was a Portuguese colony. Lisbon ruled through extraction, labor, land, and resources, leaving deep inequalities between regions and ethnic communities. But in 1974, everything changed. The Carnation Revolution in Portugal toppled the dictatorship in Lisbon. The new government announced it would grant independence to its African colonies. Angola's liberation movement, long fighting in the bush, prepared to take power. There were 3 major factions. First, the MPLA, the Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola. Led by Agostinho Neto, the MPLA had strong support among the Mbundu people and in urban centers like Luanda. It embraced Marxist ideology and received backing from the Soviet Union and Cuba. Second, the FNLA, the National Liberation Front of Angola. Led by Holden Roberto, it drew much of its support from the Bakongo ethnic group and received backing from Zaire and, briefly, the United States. Third, UNITA, the National Union for the Total Independence of Angola. Led by the charismatic and controversial Jonas Savimbi, UNITA's base lay among the Mbundu people in central and southern Angola. Savimbi positioned himself as anti-communist, a message that resonated in Washington and Pretoria. On November 11, 1975, Portugal formally withdrew. The MPLA declared itself the legitimate government in Luanda. FNLA and UNITA formed a rival coalition in Huambo. Angola was independent and immediately at war. This was not only about ideology, it was about region, ethnicity, power, oil, diamonds, and the Cold War. The Soviet Union and Cuba backed the MPLA. The United States, South Africa, and Zaire supported UNITA and the FNLA. Over the next 27 years, between 500,000 and 800,000 people would die from combat, hunger, disease, and displacement. Millions would flee. Landmines would scar the countryside so deeply that Angola would later have one of the highest amputee rates in the world. Children would grow up knowing only war. As Portugal withdrew, fighting erupted instantly. The MPLA controlled Luanda, but UNITA and FNLA forces advanced toward the capital. South Africa launched Operation Savannah, sending armored columns north from Namibia to support UNITA. At the same time, Cuban aircraft and ships arrived in Luanda. At one point, nearly 36,000 Cuban troops were deployed, eventually rising to over 50,000. The intervention shifted the balance. By early 1976, the MPLA had pushed FNLA forces out of the capital. The FNLA collapsed as a major force. UNITA retreated south and east into the bush. The MPLA declared victory, but it was only the beginning. The late 1970s and 1980s transformed Angola into a Cold War battlefield. After's death in 1979 became president, leading the MPLA government. UNITA under E waged a brutal guerrilla war in rural areas. The government controlled oil-rich coastal cities. UNITA controlled diamond-rich interior zones. Oil revenues funded the MPLA army. Diamonds funded UNITA. Foreign powers fueled both. The United States covertly supplied UNITA with weapons. South Africa launched cross-border raids, targeting both Angolan government forces and SWAPO fighters operating from Angola. Cuba expanded its presence. Then came the Battle of Cuito, Cuanavale. Between 1987 and 1988, one of the largest conventional battles ever fought in Africa since World War II unfolded in southeastern Angola. South African forces, UNITA fighters, Angolan government troops, and Cuban units clashed in a massive confrontation. Each side later claimed victory, but the battle changed the political calculus. It demonstrated that neither side could win outright. And it led to negotiations. In 1988, the New York Accords were signed. Cuban troops began withdrawing. South Africa agreed to grant independence to Namibia. By 1991, the Bicesse Accords aimed to end the Angolan conflict. Elections were held in 1992. The MPLA won. UNITA rejected the results. Violence returned, swiftly and brutally. In Luanda, clashes erupted in what became known as the Halloween Massacre, with hundreds, possibly thousands, killed in urban fighting. Across the countryside, UNITA remobilized. Civilians were caught between shifting front lines. A survivor later recalled, "One week government soldiers came. The next week, UNITA, we learned not to speak too much. Landmines multiplied. Farmers stepping into their own fields lost legs. Children playing in open ground lost limbs." In 1994, the Lusaka Protocol created another ceasefire. But mistrust lingered. By the late 1990s, peace had collapsed again. UNITA resumed large-scale operations, but this time the balance was different. The Angolan government, strengthened by oil revenues and modernized military forces, began gaining ground. International patience with UNITA faded. Reports documented forced recruitment, child soldiers, and attacks on civilians by both sides. By 2001, UNITA was weakened. Then, on February 22, 2002, Jonas Savimbi was killed in a firefight with government troops in Moxico province. His death shocked the nation. For some, he was a freedom fighter who resisted foreign ideology. For others, he was the man who prolonged war for decades. Without Savimbi's leadership, UNITA quickly collapsed militarily. On April 4, 2002, the Luena Memorandum of Understanding was signed. UNITA agreed to disarm. The war was officially over. After 27 years, over 500,000 dead, millions displaced, entire regions devastated. The guns finally fell silent. Angola's war was never isolated. The Soviet Union and Cuba supplied arms, training, and tens of thousands of troops to support the MPLA. Cuba's leader Fidel Castro framed intervention as international solidarity. The United States, fearing communist expansion, supported UNITA, especially during the Reagan era. South Africa intervened to counter SWAPO insurgents and prevent a hostile Marxist state on its border. Zaire provided rear bases for FNLA and UNITA. Oil and diamonds sustained the conflict. The MPLA's offshore oil exports provided steady income. UNITA's control of diamond fields allowed it to purchase weapons on the global market. After 2002, peace held. Angola began reconstruction. Elections were held in 2008 and later years. Oil wealth fueled economic growth, but inequality remained stark. Landmines continued to claim victims long after the war ended. Demining efforts, supported by international NGOs and Angolan authorities, slowly reduced contamination, but vast rural areas remained dangerous. Former child soldiers underwent rehabilitation. Amputees formed advocacy networks. The scars were everywhere, physical and psychological. The Angolan Civil War teaches hard lessons. Foreign intervention can prolong conflicts. Ethnic and regional divisions can be weaponized. Natural resources can become a curse instead of a blessing. But it also teaches something else, that even after 27 years of bloodshed, war can end.
One Angolan amputee once said,
"They took my leg, but they did not take my future." From decades of destruction came fragile peace. The land still bears landmines. The people still bear memory. But Angola endures. From 27 years of bloodshed came fragile peace, a reminder that even the longest wars can end, but scars remain. If this story moved you, like and subscribe to Untold African Wars for more untold African histories. And tell us in the comments, next, Darfur, Tigray, or another forgotten chapter. History deserves to be remembered.